That's right, folks. Fantasy playoffs are upon us. In today's show, we're going to be using our slot versus wide analysis to talk about the best playoff schedules and the worst for players in the slot and out wide. Before we do, we want to make sure you follow us across the board at Razzball Fantasy on YouTube, IG, and TikTok. Make sure you're jumping over to razzball.com as well. We have great content from great writers, including one of the guys that are going to be jumping on the show today. So make sure you go to razzball.com for all the greatest analysis and tools, by the way, like the slot versus wide, the adjusted line yards matchup metric, everything you need to start your lineups every single week. And finally, make sure you subscribe to the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. Why? Because every Sunday we jump on live for 2 hours every single Sunday. Do start sits, starts of the week, streamers, weather updates, injury updates, everything you need to know before you set your lineups every Sunday live for 2 hours for the rest of the season on the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. But today, let's talk about fantasy playoff schedules, slot versus wide, starting right now on the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. All right, folks, if you're a regular for the Sunday Live show, you'll know the man on your screen. It's Derek Favret. You can follow him at Derek_Favret on Twitter. What's going on, Derek?
How you doing, Bobby? Great to be here today.
I'm ready to go. Oh, yeah, I'm ready to talk some slot versus wide play. So if you go to the website, you get the current week, you get rest of season. But today's show, we have pulled out the data to talk some playoff schedules. When you were doing before we even get into the players, was there anything that you when you were researching some of the names, the players, anything that really stood out to you for the slot versus wide playoff schedules?
Yeah, I did. And, in fact, I used, all the tools that you're talking about on the Razzball site, because those are fantastic tools. But, you look across that and you can really find some gold mines out there, potential gold mines, players that you're not thinking about, we're all thinking about their superstars and who plays every week. But, there's some opportunities out there that, even week 13, you can still get some of these guys on your waiver wire and they might help you in the playoffs. We love to draft, we grind all the way, through the season, but now it's getting to be crunch time and you got to plan for it.
Absolutely. And today we're going to be breaking it down by section. So today we're going to be talking about the top 5 out wide matchups. So the players who primarily play on the outside that have the best playoff matchups, and also the top 5 toughest matchups, including for the slot and out wide. So to the first topic we're going to talk about today is the big one. It's the top. We're going to start off hot. Top 5 out wide playoff matchups. There's some really good names on this list. First off, we're starting from 1 to 5, the greatest matchups for the playoffs. First off is the Indianapolis Colts have the best out wide schedule amongst all wide receivers. That's for Michael Pittman and Alex Pierce. Number 2, the Packers with Allen Lazard, Watson, and Dobbs potentially coming back. We'll see how that wide receiver core shakes out with all 4 of those guys finally healthy, really for the first time all year. You have the Steelers with Deontay Johnson, kind of underwhelming all season long, but does get the volume. Could he actually be a solid player down the stretch with that? Also, George Pickens, the rising star, has the third best playoff matchups out wide. Then the Ravens. Obviously, if you had Rashad Bateman, it would have been super nice for the playoff time, but unfortunately, he's out. You have Duvernay kind of falling back a little bit, and Demarcus Robinson stepping up a little bit. Could they be sleepers? And then finally, you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who we've been waiting for that breakout. It looks like they're starting to build a little momentum coming off a bad loss, though. You have Evans and Julio Jones. So of these top 5 playoff out wide matchups, who do you want to talk about in today's show?
Yeah, I'm going to start right up at the top with Michael Pittman and the Colts. When you look at the Colts schedule during the fantasy playoffs, they match up with some teams that are averaging 25 points per game to wideouts. And for those who don't know, the NFL average is about just under 20. So they're about 5 points per game greater than the NFL average. And that speaks well for Michael Pittman, right? Well, I don't know. I hope so. The question mark to me is who's going to be throwing the rock for the Colts. That under Matt Ryan, Michael Pittman's getting almost 10 targets per game, whereas those couple of games when Ryan was on the bench, he's only getting about 7.5 targets per game. So there's a distinct upside to Pittman when Ryan is under quarterback. Now, is he going to be there? That's the question in my mind. The Colts have Dallas this week. Dallas is one of the toughest teams against quarterbacks, and then they've got their bye week. So we're going to be going into the fantasy playoffs. So maybe a little uncertain what we're going to get from the Colts. Most players, when they drafted Michael Pittman, and I'm one of them, I'll be the first to admit, I drafted him to be a stud this year, to take me to the fantasy playoffs and to shine. He hasn't been great. He's been okay. He's been great. But under Jeff Saturday, since Jeff Saturday's been in, he's averaging about 15 points per game, which is very encouraging as we get to the playoffs. Again, we talked about the favorable schedule. So I'm crossing my fingers. Matt Ryan's still under center. When we get there, the line's giving him a little bit of protection. He's not going to be just a statue back there. He can actually have some time to find Pittman, and then I'm rolling with Pittman. So I think he has an opportunity to salvage our fantasy season. Just stick with him, and let's hope for the best. But they've got a great schedule. It's all aligned. We really have a good opportunity to take advantage of holding on to Pittman all these weeks since we drafted him, and pay off in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with, obviously the Packers situation a little confusing. I think we kind of know a little bit about the Steelers. They're highly owned. I'm actually going to take a more of a streamer appeal here and look at like a guy like Julio Jones. So you have the Bucs at the top 5. You have Tom Brady. The other thing about the Bucs that's really key is that they are getting healthier slowly. Their offensive line has been a little banged up. Chris Godwin is getting healthy. Cameron Brate has been in and out of the lineup. Leonard Fournette's been out of the lineup, but they are starting to get healthier coming out towards the latter half of this season. And the one thing I will say is they have to win every game. They are first in the division, but they're 5-6. So they need to come out and win. And I think Tom Brady is going to start ramping up a little bit more in this December timeframe. He's going to start, playing a little bit better, getting to that playoff push. But here's the thing. You look at the schedule. They have Cincinnati, Arizona, and Carolina. Those are the 3 schedules. Now, Mike Evans, I think, last week he had 9 targets, only 2 catches. Julio is out on the field playing a consistent role now, though, and I think he's out there showing that he can stay healthy a little bit. He's not a bad guy. He's only 18% owned in Yahoo right now. So if you could go scoop him up, stash him on your bench, if you've been kind of struggling at your wide receiver 3, that Cincinnati game could be a high-scoring one, especially with the Bengals losing Chidobe Awuzie. They have been a little bit more susceptible in the receiving game. I think Cincinnati could put up points. You have Arizona, another fun game where they have a good offense that could put up points against Tampa Bay. And then Carolina, listen, I think at that point in the season, it's probably be close to a must-win game against the Panthers. So I do think the good news is all those games potentially could be in decent weather. Maybe Cincinnati could be a little sketchy, but Arizona's a dome. Then you're playing at home against Carolina. So I think that's really good too. So I'm actually going to lean Julio Jones is someone that I'm going to, if I've been struggling at wide receiver 3, pick him up and stash him on your bench. Let's jump down to the top 5 slot playoff matchups. These are basically slot guys. Now, most of the guys we're going to talk about today are wide receivers, but they are sprinkling in some tight ends. The Bears just lost Darnell Mooney, and it looks like Cole Kmet really kind of took over as the main slot guy, playing the most slot snaps on the team. And the Bears actually have the best rest of playoff slot schedule. Then it's the Seahawks. Tyler Lockett kind of plays inside and out, but he does lead the team in slot targets, so I did put him in there as well. Broncos, Jerry Jeudy has been in and out of the lineup all year, but he does have a very strong playoff matchups for the Broncos. And then you have the Jets. I put Garrett Wilson in here, but it looks like because of the reemergence of Elijah Moore, Wilson's playing a little more on the outside. Kind of a little sticky there. It's hard to tell who really the Jets slot receiver will be for the playoffs, but he does lead the team in slot targets right now. And then the Panthers are kind of a dark horse here. You have Laviska Shenault, by the way, who's Shi Smith, who's the longtime slot guy, but Laviska is starting to get more work. He's a very, very good per-touch player. If that guy starts getting more volume, he's a name to monitor. Let's talk quickly about the top 5 slot schedule. Who do you want to talk about who has the best rest of slots playoff schedule?
Yeah, the guy that kind of jumps out at me at that list is Tyler Lockett. You mentioned he is in and out. About 60% of his routes are from the slot. So, if you see, you have to think that the matchup favors the slot. He's going to probably be a little bit higher in that for that game, which we can benefit from. Tyler Lockett, he burst out early on, and we thought this was going to be his year, and then he kind of quieted down. And DK Metcalf right now, he's been the one getting all the attention there from the wideouts in the recent games, but Tyler Lockett's has touchdowns in the last 4 games. If he's not getting a lot of attention for that, but he's scoring. In fact, he one of his best games of the year was almost 20 fantasy points against San Francisco, which just happens to be one of his matchups for the fantasy playoffs. So we got to love that. But he gets an average of 5 to 8 targets per week. He's double digits in almost every game he's out there. Again, San Francisco, Kansas City, they're one of the, couple of the two teams that give up most points, fantasy points per game to slots. And he's got those matchups during the fantasy playoffs. And I think probably the most important thing is the Seahawks are relevant. They're fighting for the playoffs. They're only a game behind the 49ers for the division lead, and they're right there in the wild card hunt. They're playing to win. I think they can smell it. And, Seahawks have taken everybody out of surprise, I think, this year in the way they've been playing, and to be in the position they are now, and they've got their weapons and they're going to use them. So again, I think people have kind of faded a little bit on Tyler Lockett through the season because he hasn't, made as much noise as he did in the first couple of games, but I think he can be a real strong wide receiver too for your fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with the tight end here. I'm going to go with Cole Kmet. And so one of the things with Darnell Mooney going out, Justin Fields is coming back this week. A lot of the good news is for us is like, if you're already in the playoffs, honestly, I think Cole, and you've been kind of streaming tight ends all year, I think Cole Kmet is someone I really would like to scoop up because obviously they have the bye next week. He's actually rostered in most leagues, actually 75% of leagues. So he's not as widely available, but if you're in a shallow league, maybe you can scoop a Cole Kmet. But here's why. Because with Darnell Mooney's injury, he actually led the team in routes. So it's very, very rare that a tight end will lead the team in routes. Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews are the types of guys that do that. And I know the Bears passing attack isn't like those teams, but I do see that the Bears could start using, maybe Cole Kmet more like Mark Andrews uses with Lamar Jackson, kind of a lot of similarities in those offenses, the way they use their quarterbacks. But I do like the fact that the middle of the field is going to be open for his playoff schedule. I do like the fact that, because of the injury to Darnell Mooney potentially, the good news for this though is if let's say Justin Fields, we'll see him this week, see him against the Packers, we'll see how healthy he looks. If he comes out of this game healthy, then they have the bye. I doubt they shut him down after that. If he gets banged up in this game and then they shut him down for the year, we're going to know before the playoffs start. So that is some good news there. So I do want to put Cole Kmet on my team. If I'm already in the playoffs and I've been kind of streaming tight ends, I want to stash him. I do like the fact that he's been leading the team in routes, like I said before, but he does basically play like a glorified slot guy. He led the team in slot routes in the first game without Mooney playing for most of the snaps. All right. Let's jump down. Not everything's hunky-dory. Let's talk a little bit about some of the toughest out-wide playoff schedules. That's right. There's going to be tough sledding out there for some guys who might have been mainstays on your roster. Now, just because they have tough out-wide schedules doesn't mean you automatically sit them. It just means that we have to lower expectations for these players. Let's talk about these guys. Now, the first team is actually real easy. It's the Jaguars. We don't even have to – I just put Jones because you can say Zay, you can say Marvin. It's all the outside guys. Christian Kirk plays in the slot. But keeping up with the Jones, maybe we don't keep up with the Joneses. Maybe Zay Jones is someone who's getting hot, could slow down. We have the Seattle Seahawks. I put DK Metcalf. We just talked about the Seattle Seahawks there, but Metcalf has a really tough out-wide schedule. The Titans, obviously, they look like they're getting a little bit better and healthier. You got Treylon Burks and Robert Woods both getting better, it looks like, over the last few weeks, but they have a really tough playoff schedule. You have the Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs are all over the place. You got MVS, you got Juju, you got Kadarius Toney. I know with Mecole Hardman now, Juju's played a little bit more in the slot, so maybe he's safe. But by the time the playoffs roll around, maybe Mecole Hardman comes back. We don't know. But that's something worth noting there. And finally, the Rams. Oh, the poor Rams. The Super Bowl champ Rams have just fallen apart. No Allen Robinson, no Cooper Kupp. Looks like Van Jefferson has really taken on the number one role. But who's going to be the quarterback by the time the playoffs roll around? So Van Jefferson is someone that you have to watch out for if you're going to pick him up because he's leading the team in slots routes. But who are you want to talk about today who has the toughest out-wide playoff schedule?
Yeah, I'm going to go to Middle Tennessee and talk about Treylon Burks for the Titans. He had a lot of hype in the last few weeks. He was, viewed, I think, by a lot of people and probably a lot of the experts that he might be a league winner for you coming in the middle of the season. He's been out for a while, big catching ability, and he's going to be a great receiver. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's going to be, you're pinning your hopes on a league title with him. I think you're going to be disappointed. The Titans, we know what the Titans game plan is Derrick Henry first down, is Derrick Henry on second down. Derrick Henry is going to get the rock. He's going to lead that team as far as the Titans are going to go. The Tennessee's only passing the ball about 50% of the time anyway. And, they're going to spread that around a little bit. Burks has been getting about 7 targets per game since his return, which is not bad. But, as a comparison, to the NFL average, the playoff teams he's facing is almost 4 points per game below the NFL average combined, those teams that they're going to be facing during the fantasy playoffs. So it is really going to be a tough sled for wideouts in Tennessee for our fantasy playoffs. And I just don't see Treylon Burks, giving the return that, a lot of people were hoping for, and even some experts probably promised. I don't think he's going to be able to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think when we were looking through this, we wish we had a little bit more sexy names for you, right? I mean, obviously DK Metcalf might be the one guy on this list that is widely owned and probably started on a weekly basis consistently. You could say Juju potentially as well. If you're looking at DK's schedule, so you have the really tough week 15 matchup. Now, San Francisco 49ers are kind of one of those teams where they seem like they're getting healthy at the right time, and their defense is like absolutely legit. And earlier this season, he faced them. He went 4 for 35. Now, the question is, you got DK who's getting healthy, by the way. I mean, the San Francisco 49ers defense that's healthier. He only went 4 for 35 earlier this season, so it's going to be tough. Then he gets Arizona. You think Arizona's a really good matchups, but, last time he faced the Arizona Cardinals, he went 2 for 34. So now we're starting to see a path here. Like, I don't know if I'm feeling comfortable. We've already seen him face these defenses. Then he does have a decent matchup against the Panthers in week 17. No, I'm sorry. I'm losing my mind here. I'm looking at the wrong one. Sorry. Here's the schedule. San Francisco, Kansas City is the week 16 matchup, and then the Jets. Sorry. Wow. I don't even know how. I don't even remember clicking the tab. Anyway, so it's San Francisco week 15, Kansas City in week 16, and then 17 is the Jets. Now, the Jets have really 2 good outside cornerbacks. They've been really tough against outside corners all year long. I mean, outside receivers. Kansas City could be a fun one. I'm not really necessarily concerned about the Chiefs matchup, but if you're looking at weeks 15 and 17, you can really see a scenario where he's a wide receiver 3 probably those weeks. You're probably still starting DK. He probably got you to the playoffs, but it's not as if DK has been lighting up the fantasy landscape. I mean, he has 4 games over 65 yards on the year, so he's not a high volume, high yardage guy all year long. So maybe he's a wide receiver 3 for this stretch run there. All right, let's jump down to the toughest slot playoff schedules, and let's close out the show. First, we have the Vikings. KJ Osborne, Lions, Khalif Raymond, and maybe even Amon-Ra St. Brown to an extent. The Steelers, we talk a little bit. They don't really have a slot receiver, so Pat Freiermuth kind of dominates the middle of the field for them. Then you have the Giants, who just lost Sterling Shepard. Then they lost Wan'Dale Robinson. Now they have Richie James, who, by the way, is a nice player who's been decent in PPR, but he's someone that has a really tough playoff schedule. And then finally, the Colts with Paris Campbell. So who do you want to touch on who has a really tough playoff schedule?
Yeah, I'm going to, and this one kind of pains me because I really need to count on him, but Pat Freiermuth is the one that I really hated to see pop up on this list. When you look at the numbers a little bit in his playoff schedule, the fantasy playoff schedule, they line up with Carolina, who is the toughest against slots, right off the bat. So if you're playing your first round of playoffs and you're counting on Pat Freiermuth to anchor your tight end slot, you've got the worst matchup you could possibly have, which is going to really hurt some folks, I think. Freiermuth, with tight ends being such a wasteland, Freiermuth has been really elevated to, if not the top tier, certainly the second tier, and rightfully so. He's got a lot of potential there, and and he's getting targets. But when you really look at it, he's only had 2 games where he's had greater than 10 targets, and both were against Cincinnati. 3 of them, we had 4 or less, and all of those were on the road. So he's good against Cincinnati and at home. If he's on the road against strong defenses, against the slot or against tight ends, he's really not performing yet, and that's really kind of what we're seeing. For his fantasy points per game, against top half defenses, all of his games have been under 10 points per game. Against the bottom half defenses versus tight end, all have been above points per game. So he's really matchup dependent, a lot more so than I think most people will thought. And his matchup in the playoffs are really, really tough with Carolina, Vegas, and Baltimore at Baltimore. So, again, it pains me to say it. Pat Freiermuth is probably going to disappoint some fantasy owners in the first round of the playoffs in particular. And it's just going to be tough sledding. So if you can go get a Cole Kmet like Bobby talked about earlier, that might be a sneaky good play, is to sit Freiermuth and play a Cole Kmet, in the first round of the playoffs, and that actually might make the difference for you. Just looking at the matchup. So again, it kind of pains me to say it, but Freiermuth is probably one that we're not going to be able to count on, to lead our teams to titles this year.
Yeah, I think really on this list too, when we get to the slot receivers, there's not a lot of primary. There's a very few like number one receivers that see most of their snaps in this. Like you have like the Godwins and Jacoby Myers. Fortunately, those guys are not on either poles of these lists. But when you look at these guys, I think the next guy other than Freiermuth is probably Paris Campbell. That we should that's probably because of his strong stretch when Matt Ryan came back. He's someone that maybe people started relying a little bit more on as a wide receiver 3. Now, Minnesota, the Chargers, and then the Giants for the Colts in weeks 15, 16, and 17. Now, Minnesota, none of those teams like on paper, like you would be scared about. But if you start diving into the numbers, they all lean heavy out wide when they give up their fantasy points. The Giants give up the 4th fewest fantasy points to the slot. Minnesota gives up the 8th fewest points to the slot. Then you have the Chargers, who are technically probably the best defense that he's going to face. They give up their middle of the pack. So at least the Chargers game, we could sit here and say maybe both sides will put up some points. Maybe the Chargers are going to put up points. But the Giants, that championship week, the Giants offense has really kind of started slipping a little bit. Those games get low scoring. Minnesota is a very boomer. I don't know what to think of Minnesota. Either they play Dallas and they get spanked, and then they come back and they beat the Patriots and look really good. So you don't know what you're going to get, but you would hope that game maybe has a little bit more volume to it. They're playing in a dome that week, so that's good news. So maybe there's something there. But unfortunately, if you've been relying on him as a wide receiver 3, the problem is Matt Ryan and that Colts offense has been so inconsistent that you only feel comfortable playing Michael Pittman and not Paris Campbell, because it's like, all right, unless I know this is a really good matchup for him, I'm not going to play him with Matt freaking Ryan right now. I'm not going to play Paris Campbell in a bad matchup with how Matt Ryan and that passing offense looks. So unfortunately, I think I'll probably be fading him in that scenario as well. All right, before we close the show, Derek, do you have any final thoughts? Anything else you want to discuss really quickly before we close out?
Yeah, just want to share with everyone, look from my Target Trends article midweek here on Razzball. Not only do I just look at who's getting the targets, but, try to really dig a little deeper using the tools that Bobby and I are talking about today, and just find out, what does it mean? What does it mean moving forward? So yeah, look for that article midweek each week.
Thank you, sir. All right. Well, first off, Joker, we appreciate jumping on the show today. We do love it. But listen, tomorrow we do our Sunday Live Start show. Me and Derek and our whole team are going to be on this channel for 2 hours before kickoff. Come join us. We'll answer all your start sit questions. Me and Derek, we got Saturday. We got to go out, have some fun, maybe go dancing. Who knows what we got planned today? But I appreciate being on the show today. It's been awesome. Before we go, make sure you subscribe to us across the board at Razzball Fantasy on YouTube, IG, and TikTok for that daily content. Make sure you're jumping over to Razzball.com to check out all the great tools and resources, the slot versus wide, all the great articles from our great writers. And, of course, make sure you subscribe to the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel, because we do our Sunday Live Start Shit Show every single Sunday from 8 a.m. to kickoff until the end of the season PST. Once again, I want to thank my co-host today, Derek, at Derek_Favret on Twitter. I'm your host, Bobby Lamarco. You can follow me at Bobby Lamarco on Twitter. Thank you again. We are out of here.